I definitely thought about killing myself, definitely. For me, it was just because the pain was so bad, and I was ashamed and disgusted that I was an addict and that I was a mum. Sorry, I'm getting a bit emotional there. So I was born in Lancaster. I had a really nice childhood growing up, a really happy one. I was always surrounded by my cousins and my mum, my dad, my twin sister. I've got 4 brothers. I've got 2 sisters, so there's 6 of us all together. So yeah, it was always very busy.
What were you like as a young person?
Now looking back as I'm older, I realise that, yeah, it was quite hard for me as a little girl at times. I used to overthink a lot. Like now I can recognise that I did, but at the time, obviously, I didn't know that. I think I was always observing adults and seeing how they would act with each other, and I would sort of like, make sure I was doing similar because that's what I thought was right because I was looking up to the big adults. I was 14 when I first tried drugs, and that was pills. I was going to a house party, and loads of my friends were as well, and everyone decided to take pills, and I decided to try one that night, and then after that it sort of became like a common theme. Like every other or every weekend we'd be in school and we'd be talking about what parties we'd be going to on the weekend, and everyone would be like, oh, how many pills are you getting? Should we group together and get this many between us? And even though that's like a shocking thing to say, to take pills at 14, like at the time that was just like completely normal, like everyone did it. And that's when I went on to things like, at these parties, people would also take coke, and so then I'd experiment with other things, MDMA, cocaine pills, stuff like that. And then it wasn't till I was around 17 that I heard about ketamine not long before it, and that's when I started I actually tried it for the first time at a party, and I hated it. The feeling was just... It was like I was out of control of my own body. I felt it was like a zombie-like state, and I hated that. But after, just socialising and stuff and speaking with friends at the time, I remember that everyone was telling me that I just didn't like it because it was my first time, and I was drinking alcohol at the time as well, and that has a whole different effect. And that's when I started, just slowly taking it a little bit more after that in settings during the day, not in the evening, not at parties, and that's when I started to like it, and that's when I was like, yeah, this is the drug for me.
Tell me more about that feeling of like when you took it. What was the impact, I suppose, like on your body, your senses?
The feeling of ketamine, it was, when I started to love it, that was because it was like, it feel like it sort of would numb your body, numb your mind, which is probably one of the big reasons why I loved it so much, because my mind is always racing. So when I took that, it just was like, whoop. And that's why I was like, yes, this is the one for me. I didn't really think I was addicted at the time, but now looking back, I probably was at this point, because I was taking it about 3 or 4 times a week, and I'd sit in my car, I'd go and get it off the dealer, go and sit in my car on a car park on the promenade and sniff cat. Then I'd continue to drive about all night, come back to the car park, sniff cat, and most of the time I wouldn't be alone, I'd be with friends. So, that would feel completely normal to me at the time. Even though I knew it wasn't completely normal, because I wasn't the only one doing it, it made me feel like, oh, right, well, this is okay then, because I'm not the only one. After a while, I did think, this is a bit of a problem, I think, and that is around the time when I actually started experiencing the first signs of the physical impairments of what cat can do to you, because I started to get the feeling like I had a UTI. It just felt like a little bit of a burning feeling down below, and the first thing that I could think to do was to go and get some cranberry juice. At the time, little 18-year-old me, 19-year-old me, I didn't have a clue about what ketamine could do. When I actually first went to the doctors about it was in 2021, I finally got the courage to. They did all sorts of tests. They would, wee samples, ultrasound, stuff like that, and it would all come back normal, and they would all be a bit confused. And this whole time, I didn't 100% know it was actually kept bladder at this point. That's why I call it kept bladder. Ketamine bladder, and now that I know, it's what happens is the way that ketamine metabolises inside your body then affects the bladder wall. It basically just shreds the bladder lining, and that causes your bladder to shrink or be sunken, which then makes the capacity a hell of a lot smaller. So my capacity, a female bladder should hold 500 millilitres, and I think a male is 600. And mine, at its worst, was holding 20 millilitres. So as you can imagine, that's a lot of weeing. My bladder was working way more than it needed to. So, and that's why you have the urgency, because your bladder's then shrunk and you're weeing all the time. And really sorry, but can I just go for a quick wee?
How did it progress from that point on, Amber?
I would literally live and breathe ketamine. No matter where I was, I could be nipping to see my mum for 15 minutes, and all I'd think about is, can she hurry up and finish what she's saying or doing so I can go and sniff some ket on my own, which is crazy to think. Yeah, it just ruled you out. It ruled my life at this point. I was just thinking about it wherever I was. And that's when I realised, I did know at this point, what is going on? What are you doing? What are you doing to yourself? Because at this point, the physical effects on my body from ketamine had become really bad. I got to the point where I was now having to wear nappies all the time, and pads at first, and then went on to wearing nappies, and I was weeing, I'd say at my worst, I was weeing 200 times a day. If you think you're depressed, try doing that. That is next level. You can't see many people. You're stuck in the same four walls in my bathroom constantly, and it was either that or in my bed, but most of the time it was in the bath. And it wasn't like I was just able to just lie there and be comfortable either, because I'd have to be crouched up like this, like that, and just like that. And sometimes the pain could be that bad that I wouldn't be able to move for 8 hours or something like that. And that's not an exaggeration. I managed to get some tramadol off the doctor, because at this point I was begging because of the constant agony. And so they gave me some tramadol, and I was taking that for about 2 or 3 years. And at my worst times, at one point I took 13 tramadol at the same time, just to try and stop the pain. And another time I took 13 or 14 codeine or something like that, just at another time, just to try and stop the pain. In hindsight, I know that would have made it worse. But at the time, when you're in that much agony, you don't know what to do. You will do anything. You will do anything just to stop the pain, even for a second. And with ket bladder, it just doesn't stop. It's relentless. It will go on and on and on.
And one of the side effects of this condition can also be that you're passing,
yeah,
your bladder lining. Can you just explain that as well?
Yeah, so this has happened to me on many occasions. So the first experience was that I felt like there was a rock in my wee hole, and I felt this for about a week. I remember it so clearly, and I remember I just had this urge to push, kind of like you do when you're in labour, and I started pushing while I was sat on the toilet, and I was pushing for about 6 hours or something like that. I was pushing and pushing and pushing to the point where sweat was dripping all down my face. The veins in the side of my head were popping out. My eyes were becoming red. It was really bad. And every time I pushed, I'd get this shooty pain that would go like that, and I'd feel this little rock trying to get out and travel down, that would go like that every time I stopped pushing. And so this would carry on for 6 hours, and eventually it came out, and it was a ball about that big. I put it on my hand, and I couldn't believe it. I managed to catch it in my hand when it came out, and wow, it was honestly, I knew straight away that is messed up. I thought, that is my bladder, because it had white tissue on it, it had clumps of red in it, but it was the white tissue that was going around it that scared me, because I thought, that is a part of my body. I then straight away went to Google. I was Googling for ages, what does a bladder look like? What does an actual bladder look like? I was trying to find it. I managed to find an image, and straight away I knew that was my bladder. Bits like a massive chunk of my bladder that had come out. And that was traumatic, really traumatic.
How much ketamine were you taking on a daily basis?
I was probably taking about 3.5 grams a day, and that'd be quite a bad day for me, really. So that would be a lot for me. On average, it'd probably be about 2.5 to 3. For me, the physical effects on my body made me want to take more ketamine, because I just thought, I'm in this horrible place. I can't get out of it. All I want to do now is take even more ket to deal with this other problem that I've got on top of the other problems that I already thought I had. When I was actually at my worst, I would wake up. I'd wake up at 5 a.m. and I would sniff a line of ket straight away. And then in my head, I'd think, I'd sniff this, get a bit ketty, and just go back to sleep soon. But when I was really bad at this point. I couldn't get back to sleep anymore. And so I would wake up, sniff the line of ket, be awake till the morning. And then I'd sometimes just think, well, I'm awake. I'll just go about my day and sniff ket the whole day to get myself through it. And I would do that with, anything normal. I would sniff a line of ket before going to do the food shop just so I was able to do it. Because without it, I'd be dragging myself around. I couldn't even walk 100 metres down the street. I couldn't even walk to the bottom of my driveway or out my door, down my stairs, just because of the physical pain and how bad it was.
Was there any moment where you really kind of felt like this had control over your life?
For me, it was if I couldn't get in touch with a dealer, or I knew that I couldn't maybe get it for, quite a few hours, or maybe not even that day at all, or I'd be looking forward to getting it and I found out I couldn't. That is when I would go through my drawers. I'd have a drawer next to my bed, and that would be my ket drawer. I'd have little DVD cases, any cards I could find, and I would go through that drawer and I would scrape loads of bits together. And sometimes I'd scrape as much as I can, and I'd end up with the tiniest bit ever, and I'd still sniff it just so I could get anything in me. And at the time, I did think, oh my God, like I knew how bad it was. Like I was totally ashamed of what I was doing. I knew that people had an inkling that I was addicted to ket, and I was ashamed about that. That made me feel, I'm an overthinker anyway. I worry about what people think about me. I don't like to have a bad reputation and stuff like that. And when I knew that people were starting to know, I stopped going out the house as much at this point. That just made me sit in more, isolate myself more, sniff more ket. That's all I was doing, really. Once you get into the deep addiction of it, and especially with all the physical effects, it just makes you think such negative things. It has such a sad impact on the way you think. I would completely just think, life's pointless. There's no point in me changing my life to go and do anything better with it because it's pointless. I just think we're all here to just work till we die and that's it. And I actually do find that quite crazy now that I would just think that all the time. But that's what the ketamine would do to you, and it would make me feel so down, so depressed, and just not my full self at all.
I suppose your mental lowest, what were the thoughts and feelings that you had?
I definitely thought about killing myself, definitely. I was ashamed and disgusted that I was an addict and that I was a mum. So, that was very hard for me daily. I would constantly beat myself up, constantly, So that's why I would get in the defensive if anyone said anything to me, because I already know what anyone else is going to say to me. I already tell myself this 1 million times a day.
That must be a really hard place to be.
Sorry, I'm getting a bit emotional there.
It's okay.
Not ashamed about it at the same time, because I've changed my whole life around. And I want to show people that it's possible to do that.
What was it that made you decide that you wanted to quit ketamine?
Yeah, so in 2023, I remember when it was just starting to get hot and I was sniffing a lot of ket, maybe not a lot compared to some, but a lot for me. And I was sniffing it all the time. And this was when my bladder was getting to the worst I'd ever known. Yeah, it had already been really, really bad, but this was getting even worse. And I'd be scrolling through social media and I'd see everyone I know, going on airplanes, doing something great, like graduating or, just doing all this crazy stuff. Their lives were moving on. Mine wasn't. I was just stuck in that bath, stuck in my house, only seeing barely anyone. I was so depressed. And for me, it was just seeing everyone have fun. I just thought, what are you doing? What are you actually doing to yourself? I'm doing this to myself. I'm paying to do this to myself, which is even crazier.
What was your recovery process like?
The mental side of things resolved themselves pretty quickly. Within a month, I was back mentally to where I wanted to be. I was not having negative thoughts anymore. I was so much happier. I never in a million years thought I'd be able to just stop an addiction just like that. And I did, and it's possible.
And Amber, what is your prognosis? What does the future of your bladder condition look like? Is there a cure?
So I've been told that my bladder damage is fully irreversible, and I believe that it's irreversible. Some may get affected worse, some may get affected not as much, some may heal quicker. I'm just one of the bad ones, unfortunately, but I want to stress that it's quite common to be one of the bad ones, and this is what ketamine does to the body. And I want people to know just how bad it can affect every aspect of your life, how bad the pain is. I really won't wish it upon anyone. I don't want anyone to go through it again, because I just know how bad it can mess your mind up, your physical health. And look, I'm 2 years, 3 months sober now, and I'm still in a bad way. We're still wearing adult nappies at the age of 28. I have to, constantly think about what I'm wearing. I can't wear half as much as what anyone my age can. I can't go out drinking. I can't drink alcohol. It's not the be-all and end-all for me, but I want to be able to go out with my friends and have a girls' night out and have a few drinks and stuff like that. I've not been on holiday in 7 years because I've not been able to get on a plane because of the pain.
Why have you decided to share your story?
Because my story is quite a shocking one, really. How long I've been off the ketamine now. Any people would think, like I've said, that I would be healed, I would be sorted, I'd be back to my normal life by now, but I'm not. It's still affecting me every single day. If I can, be on a platform and get people to listen about this situation, then yeah, great. And if one person listens and it helps one person, then yeah, that makes me feel happy.
I decided to put it all on one bet, one horse, in one horse race, the Cheltenham Gold Cup in March 2018. And if that horse won, I would have won that money back. I had the intention to pay everybody back. If it didn't win, it had literally become a matter of life and death, and I was going to go and kill myself.